Welcome to the next video in my Big Tips on the Big Board series. Today I've got smiley faces on both sides because I'm hoping to put a smile on your face with the topic that I'm talking about today. And it's one of the questions I get asked the most, and it's how do we read our audience on screen? Now, I'm going to tackle this topic. It's really tough to read our audience on video, very different from in person, but we're going to give it a go. And to do that, I'm going to be a bit more visual today and just pop in 4 boxes to illustrate the points and the tips that I want to bring forward. So, thinking about how to read our audience on screen. As we know, it is very different to in person. We can't gauge how people are feeling. We can't really gauge what the atmosphere is like in the room, bounce off of that energy. We've got this tiny window where we can see people. Sometimes we can't see them. And how do we try to read how they're reacting and engaging with us on our video presentations? So the first thing that I want to think about is, are their videos on or off? That is literally someone on a video screen. Because I do try to approach these situations with a bit of a positive mindset, because there are some reasons why some people might have their videos off. More often than not, when we're delivering presentations virtually, we might be chairing meetings, providing an update. More often than not, there are going to be some people who don't have their videos on. And there may be genuine reasons why that is. They could have distractions in the house, they don't know who or what's going to come flying into the background behind them, or they may have poor internet connection and they're trying to maximise their connection by turning their videos off. There may be genuine reasons other than what we think it is, and that's that they're not engaged or they're not listening to us and what we're saying. It might not be that case. So think about how you're approaching dealing with people with their videos off. And there are ways to try to engage them on video to entice them to turn their videos on. That's one for another series. But think about, are their videos on or off? Are they engaged? Are they not? Because it might not mean that they're not engaged. There could be reasons to it. So think about approaching it with a bit more of a positive mindset to help us going in to these video presentations. The next one that I want to focus on, and this is always fun when I try to draw some eyes, is eye contact. So I've spoken about eye contact from a presenter's point of view in terms of actually giving direct eye contact to our camera lens, building that rapport with our audience. We need to remember that our audience are going to be focused on us on their screens when we're delivering a presentation, communicating something to them. So we're not going to get that direct eye contact from our audience. Similarly, their heads might be down. They might be making notes about what we're talking about, hopefully. We said something interesting and they're trying to jot some notes down there as well. So if your audience isn't giving direct eye contact to the screen, it doesn't, again, necessarily mean that they're not engaged. If their heads are down, more often than not, they're probably writing some notes about what we've said. But let's not be put off by the lack of eye contact that we might have with our audience on screen. So we do need to think about, okay, this applies to people that do have their videos on, and assuming that if they've got their videos on, they know they're going to be seen and they want to be as engaging as possible. But eye contact is a good one to think about and interpret in a way that isn't, okay, they're not looking at me, therefore they're not engaged. It might not be the case. It just might be that they're making some notes or thinking about what you're saying as well. The next one is to look and engage with the chat. Most video conferencing softwares that we're going to be using have the chat function. And this is a really good way to try to get a sense of the energy, so-called energy in the virtual room, depending on how people are responding to questions we're putting out there, if they've got comments coming through. This will help us to gauge if people are really following what we're saying. So now and again, make sure you're inviting people to put comments and questions in the chat, put some questions out there so you can actually ask them something that they need to respond to. It's a really good way of kind of gauging, are they with me or are they not? And the next one that relates to that as well, that I recommend doing, is to set a task. Now, this isn't necessarily to catch people out, although that might be a reason why you might do it. But if you can set a task, it keeps people on their toes a little bit, because you're actually asking them to do something and act on something. It's not just a case of sitting back and listening to what you're saying. It's about being quite interactive as well. So if you're noticing that, okay, there's not much going on in the chat, I don't feel like I'm getting much from the audience who are on video, let's set a task. The one that I like to do is do a bit of a poll or a survey. Most platforms, and I know not all of them will do this, but some of them do allow you to see the percentage of people who have responded to a poll. So if you put an online poll up there, you can often see how many people have responded. So you could then give that feedback. Okay, 50% of you have already answered the question. Great. Going to get it another 20, 30 seconds just for the rest of you to get your answers in. This will allow you to gauge how many of them are engaging or are maybe switching off a little bit. Because if all of them are then interacting on a task, you can see the percentage. It's quite a nice way to gauge that as well. It might be a different task that you ask them to do. When you go into breakout rooms, they often have to accept to go into a breakout room. Obviously, it depends on the type of presentation that you're doing, and that might not be relevant, but it's another way to see, okay, are they just sitting in the background, or have they left completely with their videos off, or are they entering that breakout room as well? So think about the tasks that you can bring in to re-engage your audience, but really to kind of test out, are they still with me and are they not? Now, this is a really tough one to tackle, and as I said, I've made the effort to try to think, okay, let's go into these situations with a bit more of a positive mindset, especially when we can't see people on our videos. We might not be getting much eye contact for them, or they might be looking a little bit bored. Some people naturally sit with their arms folded, for example, because they find it's quite a comfortable position. It's not to say that they're bored. So sometimes we overthink it and try to read too much into what we're seeing on the screen. And we really need to trust ourselves sometimes that we've got this, we know our content, we're engaging our audience as much as possible, and this is going well. So we do need to have that element of trust and self-belief at times as well. And again, use the chat, set some tasks if you need to really sort of re-engage the audience and test out, are they with me or are they not? So that's the big communication tip today, ways to read our audience as best as possible on video using the big board. If you found this video useful, check out even more ways to upgrade your impact by subscribing to my YouTube channel.